The coffee cup slipped from Emma Hayes's trembling fingers, splashing hot liquid across the scarred wooden table at Mabel's diner. Outside, rain lashed against the windows as a late autumn storm rolled through Cedar Falls. Emma reached for napkins, her movements frantic, her eyes darting toward the exit like a cornered animal seeking escape. This was supposed to be their first date. 3 years since moving to this small town, and she'd finally worked up the courage to meet someone new. Noah Walsh watched her with steady eyes, the kind that seemed to take in everything without judgment. He didn't rush to help clean the spill. Instead, he recognized the look on her face, the expression of someone about to confess something they believed would end whatever was beginning between them. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Emma's face, making the dark circles under her eyes look like bruises. She pressed her back against the vinyl booth, cornered, trapped. Her voice came out raw, barely above a whisper. "Noah, I need to tell you something before this goes any further." She swallowed hard, her knuckles white against the table's edge. "I'm not a virgin. I have a past that's complicated." The words hung between them like a blade. Noah's hand moved slowly across the table, covering hers. When he spoke, his voice carried something that made her breath catch. "Emma, I never asked you to be." Emma's eyes widened like she'd been slapped. She'd prepared for judgment, for the slow retreat that always came when men learned about her history. Instead, Noah's thumb traced gentle circles across her knuckles, his wedding ring catching the harsh diner light. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender that tears threatened to spill. Around them, the evening crowd of Cedar Falls carried on their conversations, oblivious to the moment unraveling at the corner booth. The small town had its rhythms, farmers coming in after long days in the fields, factory workers stopping by after shift changes, teachers grading papers over endless cups of coffee. Emma had chosen this place precisely because of its normalcy, thinking it would make what she had to say easier. Now she wasn't so sure. "You don't understand," Emma whispered, pulling her hand back slightly. "I'm not just talking about sleeping with someone. I mean, I have real baggage." The silence stretched until the bell above the diner door chimed, letting in a gust of October wind that carried the smell of dying leaves. Emma flinched at the sound, her body coiled like a spring, ready to bolt. Noah noticed the way her eyes darted toward the exit, the same look he'd seen in wounded animals. He'd spent enough time working with his hands to recognize when something fragile was about to break. "Tell me," he said simply, his voice low enough that it wouldn't carry to the neighboring tables. The fluorescent light above their booth flickered, casting intermittent shadows across Emma's face as she wrestled with words that had been locked away for years. Her fingers found the edge of her cardigan sleeve, pulling it down to cover scars that Noah couldn't quite see, but somehow sensed were there. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet he had to lean forward to catch the words. "I gave birth when I was 16 years old." Noah's coffee grew cold, and Emma's story spilled out in fragments, each piece carefully measured like she was rationing pain. She spoke of teenage mistakes and impossible choices, of signing papers that felt like signing away pieces of her soul. The baby girl Lily had been placed with a loving family, the Morrisons, who gave her everything Emma couldn't provide at 16. "I thought I'd buried it," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Moved across 3 states, became someone new, but the past has a way of finding you." She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, showing Noah a message thread that made his blood run cold. The texts were from an unknown number, messages that spoke of a 13-year-old girl searching for her birth mother. Emma's face crumpled as she read one aloud. "Why did my real mom give me away? Doesn't she love me?" The weight of Emma's confession settled between them like a third presence at the table. Noah found himself thinking of his own 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, tucked safely at home with her grandmother, while he attempted this first awkward step back into the world of dating. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a man who'd spent 3 years devoted entirely to raising his child, sitting across from a woman who'd given hers away. "What did you tell her?" Noah asked, his voice gentle. Emma's laugh was bitter, sharp enough to cut. "I haven't told her anything. I ran. I came here to Cedar Falls because it was small enough to disappear in, far enough from Minneapolis that I thought she'd never find me." She wiped her nose with a crumpled napkin, mascara smudging beneath her eyes. Some mother I turned out to be. Noah studied Emma's face in the flickering light, noting the way she held herself like someone expecting a blow. Her confession hung between them, raw and bleeding, and he understood that this moment would define whatever came next. Instead of making excuses and walking away, he signaled the waitress for more coffee and settled back in his seat. "My daughter Sophie lost her mother 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Car accident. I moved us here from Des Moines because I thought a small town would be better for healing." Emma's eyes flickered with something. Surprise, maybe hope. "Every day I wonder if I'm enough for her, if I'm making the right choices. Parenthood is terrifying, whether you're 16 or 35. The waitress refilled their cups, the ordinary gesture somehow anchoring them back to the normal world. Noah waited until she was gone before continuing. "But running from love never makes it hurt less." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She doubled over slightly, pressing her hand to her stomach as if Noah had reached across the table and punched her. Love. The word she'd been avoiding for 13 years, wrapped up in guilt and shame until she couldn't separate one from the other. "You think I loved her?" she whispered, the question breaking apart at the edges. "You think abandoning your child is love?" Noah's response was immediate, certain in a way that made her look up sharply. "I think giving her to people who could provide what you couldn't was the most loving thing a 16-year-old could do." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But I also think 13 years of running might be enough." The fluorescent light above them steadied, casting everything in harsh relief. Emma could see every line of exhaustion on Noah's face, every shadow that spoke of his own losses and difficult choices. This man who'd raised a daughter alone, who'd clawed his way through grief to be sitting here tonight, was offering her something she'd never expected to find. Understanding. The diner had mostly emptied while they talked, leaving them alone with the night shift waitress and soft rock playing from speakers that had seen better decades. Emma found herself studying Noah's hands wrapped around his coffee mug. Steady hands, she noticed, with small scars that spoke of a man who wasn't afraid of honest work. "My daughter's name is Sophie," Noah said suddenly, pulling out his phone to show Emma a picture. The little girl had dark hair and pigtails and a gap-toothed grin that lit up her whole face. "She's 8, asks me every few weeks when I'm going to find her a new mom." Emma's breath caught at the casual intimacy of the gesture. This man sharing his most precious thing with someone he'd just met. "She's beautiful," Emma managed, her voice thick. Noah smiled, the first genuine one she'd seen all evening. "She's everything. Some days I think I'm completely failing her, and other days I catch her humming while she colors, and I think maybe we're going to be okay." Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the normality of it all. Here was a man talking about homework and pigtails and the ordinary magic of raising a child, while she'd spent 13 years convincing herself she was some kind of monster. When she opened her eyes, Noah was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Patience, maybe, or something deeper. "I keep her letters," Emma said suddenly, the words escaping before she could stop them. "Every year on Lily's birthday, I write her a letter, tell her about what's happening in my life, what I hope she's learning in school, how sorry I am." She pressed her lips together hard enough to leave white marks. "I have 13 letters I've never sent." Noah didn't say anything, but his hand moved across the table again, fingers brushing against hers. The touch was light, barely there, but it grounded her enough to continue. "Beth and David send pictures sometimes through the lawyer who handled the adoption. Lily playing violin, Lily at science camp, Lily winning a spelling bee." Her voice broke completely. "She looks just like I did at her age, but happier. So much happier." The admission seemed to drain something vital from Emma, leaving her slumped against the vinyl booth like a punctured balloon. Noah watched the fight go out of her, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. The terrible weight of carrying secrets alone was something he understood intimately. "Emma," he said quietly, waiting until she looked at him, "what if she's not looking for someone to blame? What if she just wants to understand?" The question hung between them, dangerous in its simplicity. Emma's fingers found the sleeve of her cardigan again, whirring the fabric like a prayer. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the diner's windows and sending leaves skittering across the empty parking lot. The sound made both of them glance toward the door, as if the outside world might intrude on this fragile conversation at any moment. When Emma spoke again, her voice was so small Noah had to strain to hear it. What if I disappoint her? What if I'm not what she needs? Noah's answer came without hesitation, carrying the weight of someone who'd wrestled with similar fears in the dark hours after his wife's death. What if you are exactly what she needs, and you're both too scared to find out? The words settled into Emma like seeds in fertile ground, taking root despite her best efforts to remain guarded. She could feel something shifting inside her chest, a loosening of the tight knot she'd carried for 13 years. The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in stark relief. The coffee rings on the table, the exhaustion written across Noah's features, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the irredeemable failure she'd convinced herself she was. I don't know how to be someone's mother, Emma whispered. I don't know how to be anything other than the woman who ran away. Noah smiled then, tired but genuine. I didn't know how to be a single father either. Still don't most days, but Sophie and I figure it out together, one mistake at a time. On the simplicity of it, the idea that love could be built from uncertainty and daily choice made Emma's chest tighten with something that felt dangerously like hope. Emma's phone buzzed against the table, the sound sharp enough to make them both jump. She glanced at the screen and went rigid, her face draining of color so completely that Noah thought she might faint. It's her, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. It's Lily. The message was simple, devastating in its directness. I know you live in Cedar Falls now. Please don't run away again. I just want to talk. Noah watched Emma's hands shake as she set the phone down, her breathing shallow and rapid. The past had finally caught up with her, arriving not in the dramatic confrontation she'd feared, but in the quiet desperation of a teenage girl who just wanted answers. She found me, Emma said, her voice hollow with shock. After all this time, all these miles, she found me. The diner suddenly felt too small, too bright, the fluorescent lights buzzing like angry insects overhead. Emma's eyes darted toward the exit again, every muscle in her body coiled for flight. But Noah's hand closed gently over hers, anchoring her to the moment. Maybe it's time to stop running, he said softly. The words hung between them like a challenge, like a promise, like the first tentative step towards something neither of them had dared to hope for. Emma stared at the phone screen, at the words that represented everything she'd been afraid of, and everything she'd secretly wanted for 13 years. Her daughter was reaching out, not with anger or accusation, but with the simple request that had the power to change everything, just to talk. I don't know how, Emma whispered. But even as she said it, her fingers were moving across the screen, crafting a response that would bridge 13 years of silence. The drive to Noah's house passed in nervous silence. Emma followed his taillights through the quiet neighborhoods of Cedar Falls, her mind spinning with possibilities and worst-case scenarios. She'd called in sick to the clinic where she worked as a nurse, claiming a migraine that wasn't entirely false. Noah had invited her over for coffee and conversation, a chance to think through her options away from the harsh lights and curious stares of the diner. His house sat on a tree-lined street that looked like something from a Norman Rockwell painting. White picket fences and wraparound porches. Halloween decorations dotted the yards, carved pumpkins glowing orange out in the darkness, fake spider webs stretching between porch columns. Noah's living room was warm and lived in, full of the comfortable chaos that came with raising a child alone. Sophie's art projects covered the refrigerator. Her backpack sat abandoned by the front door, and a half-finished puzzle sprawled across the coffee table. Family photos lined the mantel. Noah and Sophie at the beach, blowing out birthday candles, reading together on this very couch. But it was the single photo of a dark-haired woman holding baby Sophie that made Emma's breath catch. Julia, Noah's wife, Sophie's mother, the ghost that haunted this house, despite the warmth and laughter that clearly filled it. She was beautiful, Emma said softly, nodding toward the photo. Noah followed her gaze, his expression growing soft and distant. Yes, she was. They worked together to craft a response to Lily, Noah's steady presence keeping Emma grounded as her anxiety threatened to spiral. The message they finally settled on was simple, honest. Hi, Lily. I got your message, and I'm not running away this time. I'd like to talk too, but I want to make sure we do this in a way that's best for you. Can I contact Beth and David first so we can all figure this out together? Emma's finger hovered over the send button for several long minutes, Noah's hand warm on her shoulder. She's been waiting 13 years, Noah said quietly. A few more minutes won't hurt, but she needs to know you're not disappearing again. Emma closed her eyes, took a deep breath that tasted like coffee, impossibility, and pressed send. When Lily's reply came, a simple "thank you for not running," followed by 3 heart emojis, Emma broke down completely. 13 years of carefully controlled emotions spilling out in great heaving sobs. Noah held her while she cried, his arms strong and steady around her shaking shoulders. He didn't offer platitudes or try to minimize her pain. He simply held space for it, understanding that some wounds needed to be felt completely before they could begin to heal. When the worst of the storm had passed, Emma found herself curled against Noah's chest, breathing in the clean scent of his shirt and marveling at how natural it felt to be held by this man she'd known for less than 24 hours. A soft creak on the stairs made them both look up. Sophie stood in the doorway, her dark hair rumpled from sleep, clutching a stuffed elephant against her chest. She blinked at them, eyes widening at the sight of her father holding a crying stranger. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain. Noah gently disentangled himself from Emma, going to his daughter and kneeling to her level. "Hey, sweetheart, I thought you were asleep." His voice was gentle, the same tone he'd used with Emma earlier. "This is my friend Emma. She's having a hard night." Sophie studied Emma with the frank curiosity of childhood, her head tilted to one side. "Like when I fell off my bike and skinned both knees?" Noah smiled. "Something like that, but on the inside where we can't see it." Sophie nodded solemnly as if this made perfect sense. Then to Emma's surprise, the little girl patted across the room and held out her stuffed elephant. "Mr. Trunks helps me when I'm sad," she said, offering the worn toy. "He's magic." Emma took the elephant with trembling hands, something shifting in her chest as she looked into Sophie's earnest eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's very kind of you." Sophie smiled, revealing the gap in her front teeth that Emma had seen in the photo. Then she turned to her father. "Can I have some water, please?" Of course, Noah stood, glancing between his daughter and Emma. "I'll be right back." When he was gone, Sophie climbed onto the couch beside Emma, her small legs dangling. "You have sad eyes," she said matter-of-factly, "like Daddy's when he looks at Mommy's pictures." The observation was so astute, so gently delivered, that Emma felt tears prick at her eyes again. This little girl, who'd lost her own mother at 5 years old, seemed to understand something about love and loss that most adults spent years trying to figure out. "Do you think your daughter misses you?" Sophie asked, with the casual directness of someone too young to understand that some questions cut like knives. Emma froze, wondering how much Sophie had overheard. "What?" "I heard you talking," Sophie said, fidgeting with the hem of her pajama top. "You have a daughter named Lily, but you don't live with her." Emma considered the question seriously, setting Mr. Trunks in her lap to give Sophie her full attention. "I think she probably missed having questions answered," Emma said carefully. "I think she wanted to know why I made the choice I did and whether I ever thought about her." Sophie nodded solemnly, as if this explanation made perfect sense. "Daddy says love isn't always about being together. Sometimes it's about making sure someone is safe and happy, even if it makes you sad." The wisdom of it, delivered in a piping 8-year-old voice in the middle of the night, made Emma's chest tight with gratitude for this unexpected connection that was slowly weaving itself around her heart. Noah returned with a glass of water, his eyes softening at the sight of his daughter, sitting beside Emma, deep in conversation. He handed Sophie the water, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "Time to get back to bed, kiddo. You've got school tomorrow." Sophie took a long drink, then hopped off the couch. She hesitated, then turned back to Emma. "If your daughter comes to visit, can she play with me? I'm good at sharing." Emma swallowed hard against the lump in her throat. "I think she'd like that very much." Sophie beamed, then hugged her father's legs. "Night, Daddy. Night, Miss Emma." They watched her climb the stairs, Noah's expression a mixture of pride and wonder. "Sorry about that," he said, returning to his seat. "She's always been good at reading people." Emma shook her head, still holding Mr. Trunks in her lap. Don't apologize. She's amazing. Noah's smile was soft, private. Yeah, she is. A comfortable silence settled between them, the storm outside having passed, leaving only the gentle patter of dripping eaves. Emma's phone sat on the coffee table, Lily's message still visible on the screen. For the first time in 13 years, Emma felt something like peace when she looked at her daughter's name. What happens now? Noah asked quietly. Emma drew a deep breath, feeling steadier than she had in years. Now I stop running. I talk to Beth and David. I try to be someone Lily can be proud to know. She glanced up at him. And I think I owe you a proper date that doesn't involve me having an emotional breakdown in a diner. Noah laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I've had worse first dates. At least you didn't spend the entire time talking about your ex. Emma smiled, feeling the tension of the evening begin to dissolve. There's still time. Noah reached over and gently took Mr. Trunks from her hands, setting the stuffed elephant aside. Then with deliberate care, he took both her hands in his. Emma Hayes, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Someplace without fluorescent lighting and an audience of diner patrons? Emma looked down at their joined hands, at the steady warmth of his touch, and felt something unfurl inside her chest. Something that felt suspiciously like the beginning of hope. Yes, she said simply, I would like that very much. Outside, the clouds had parted, revealing a sky full of stars over Cedar Falls. Inside, two people who had spent years running from different kinds of pain found themselves standing still for the first time, facing the possibility that some wounds, when shared, began to heal. The week that followed felt like walking a tightrope without a net. Emma went through the motions at the clinic, taking temperatures and administering flu shots with practiced efficiency, but her mind was elsewhere. Every few hours, she'd check her phone, half expecting to find a message from Lily saying she'd changed her mind, that she didn't want to meet after all. Instead, she found herself in careful, tentative conversations with Beth Morrison, arranging a meeting that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She's been searching for you for almost 2 years, Beth had told her during their first phone call, her voice warm but cautious. David and I always told her she was adopted, but when she turned 11, she started asking more specific questions. Where did I come from? Who was my birth mother? Why did she give me away? Emma had gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles went white. What did you tell her? The truth, that you were very young, that you wanted her to have opportunities you couldn't provide, that it was the hardest decision you ever made. Emma had to sit down, overwhelmed by the grace of this woman who had raised her child, who could have painted her as a villain, but instead offered understanding. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve that kindness. It's not about what any of us deserve, Beth had replied. It's about what Lily needs. Now, as Emma pulled into the parking lot of Noah's woodworking shop, she found herself repeating those words like a mantra. This isn't about what I deserve. It's about what Lily needs. The shop was a converted barn on the outskirts of town, the weathered red paint and hand-carved wooden sign giving it a rustic charm that felt quintessentially American. Inside, the air smelled of sawdust and varnish, the late afternoon light streaming through high windows and catching the dust motes that danced in the air. Noah looked up from a cherry wood table he was sanding, his face breaking into a smile when he saw her. He wore a simple flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle from years of working with his hands. A thin layer of sawdust covered his dark hair, giving him a salt and pepper look that Emma found unexpectedly appealing. You're early, he said, setting down his tools and wiping his hands on a rag tucked into his back pocket. I couldn't focus at work, Emma admitted, stepping deeper into the shop. She ran her fingers along the edge of a half-finished bookcase, admiring the precision of the joinery. This is beautiful. Noah shrugged, but she could see the pride in his eyes. It's honest work. Not glamorous, but there's something satisfying about creating things that will be in someone's home for generations. Emma nodded, understanding perfectly. As a nurse, she rarely saw the long-term impact of her work. Patients came in sick or injured. She helped them, and they left. Noah's creations would outlive him, bearing witness to family dinners and children's homework, to Christmas mornings and quiet Sunday afternoons. I spoke to Beth Morrison again today, she said, perching on a sturdy workbench. We've arranged to meet this weekend. In Des Moines, at a restaurant halfway between here and their home in Ames. Noah set down the sandpaper he'd been fidgeting with, giving her his full attention. How do you feel about that? Emma laughed, the sound tinged with hysteria. Terrified, excited, nauseous, take your pick. Noah stepped closer until he was standing directly in front of her. Without the height advantage of the workbench, Emma would have had to crane her neck to look at him. As it was, they were nearly eye to eye. You're going to be fine, he said quietly. Better than fine. You're going to be exactly what Lily needs. How can you be so sure, Emma whispered. You barely know me. Noah's gaze was steady, unwavering. I know enough. I know you've carried this weight for 13 years without letting it crush you. I know you kept writing those letters even when you thought they'd never be read. I know you're brave enough to stop running, even when every instinct is telling you to flee. His words washed over her like a benediction, like absolution for sins she'd carried for so long they'd become part of her identity. Will you come with me? The question slipped out before she could think better of it. To meet Lily, I mean. You don't have to stay for the whole thing, just I could use the moral support for the drive there. Noah's expression softened. Of course, if you're sure that's what you want. Emma nodded, relief flooding through her. I'm sure. Noah smiled, then glanced at his watch. I should clean up. Sophie will be done with her piano lesson soon, and I promised her pizza night. Emma hopped down from the workbench, suddenly self-conscious. I should go. Let you get back to your evening. Noah caught her hand before she could retreat. Have dinner with us, he said, his voice carrying that same quiet certainty she was coming to associate with him. Sophie's been asking about you all week, unless you have other plans. The invitation hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Emma thought about her empty apartment, the frozen dinner waiting in her freezer, the silence that would surround her as she obsessed over the upcoming meeting with Lily. I'd like that, she said, squeezing his hand. I'd like that very much. Sophie's piano lesson ended with a flourish of mismatched notes that somehow sounded purposeful in their chaos. Mrs. Abernathy, a retired music teacher with silver hair and infinite patience, gave the girl an encouraging smile as Emma and Noah waited by the door. You're making real progress, Mrs. Abernathy said, closing the beginner's piano book. Just remember to practice every day, even if it's only for 15 minutes. Sophie hopped off the bench, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. Dad says consistent effort beats sporadic talent. Mrs. Abernathy chuckled, glancing at Noah with approval. Your father is a wise man. The drive to the pizza place was filled with Sophie's chatter about school and friends, her voice rising with excitement when she mentioned the upcoming Halloween parade. Emma sat in the passenger seat, watching Noah's interactions with his daughter in the rearview mirror. The easy back and forth between them spoke of a relationship built on trust and genuine affection. Something twisted in Emma's chest, not quite envy, but a sharp awareness of what she'd missed with Lily. Would they have had inside jokes? Would Lily have looked at her with that same unguarded adoration that Sophie directed at Noah? Vinny's Pizza occupied a corner storefront on Main Street, its red and white striped awning faded from years of sun. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs of local sports teams and signed celebrity photos of people Emma didn't recognize. The owner, a burly man with an impressive mustache, greeted Noah like an old friend. Walsh, the usual table's waiting. He nodded toward a booth by the window, then noticed Emma. And who's this lovely lady? Emma felt her cheeks warm under the scrutiny. Noah placed a hand at the small of her back, a casual gesture that felt surprisingly intimate. Vinny, this is Emma Hayes. Emma, this is Vinny DeLuca, owner of the best pizza in 3 counties. Vinny's handshake was firm, his dark eyes assessing but kind. Any friend of Noah's is welcome here. First time at Vinny's? Emma nodded. I haven't been in town very long. 3 years isn't that short, Noah corrected gently. 3 years? Vinny raised an eyebrow. And Noah's just now bringing you in? He must be slipping. Sophie tugged at Emma's sleeve. Dad says hiding is easier than living, but not better. The table fell silent, the simple wisdom of the child landing like a thunderclap. Noah cleared his throat, clearly embarrassed. Sophie, why don't you go put a quarter in the jukebox? Pick something good. As Sophie skipped away, Noah shook his head. Sorry about that. She has a habit of repeating things I say when I think she's not listening. Emma smiled, finding the moment more touching than awkward. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes, Noah admitted, watching his daughter carefully select a song. She doesn't miss much. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a large pepperoni pizza, the cheese still bubbling from the oven. The familiar ritual of dinner unfolded around Emma, passing napkins, blowing on two hot bites. Sophie's detailed explanation of why the crust was the best part. Emma found herself relaxing into the normalcy of it, the simple pleasure of shared food and uncomplicated company. It was only when Sophie went to play the arcade game in the corner that Noah broached the subject they had been avoiding. Are you ready for Saturday? Emma folded her napkin into smaller and smaller squares, focusing on the task to avoid meeting his eyes. I don't think I'll ever be ready, but I'm going anyway. Noah reached across the table, stilling her restless hands. Tell me what you're most afraid of. Emma finally looked up, finding no judgment in his steady gaze. That she'll hate me. That she'll look at me and see all the ways I failed her. That I'll say the wrong thing and hurt her even more than I already have. Noah considered this, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. Do you know what I was most afraid of after Julia died? That Sophie would forget her. That I wouldn't be able to keep her mother alive in her memory. He swallowed hard. But kids are resilient. They can hold more love than we give them credit for. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the generosity of this man who kept offering his own pain as a bridge to help her cross the chasm of hers. Thank you, she whispered, for understanding, for not judging. Noah's smile was tinged with sadness. We've all got scars, Emma. The lucky ones find someone who doesn't flinch when they see them. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities, until Sophie returned, proudly displaying a plastic spider ring she'd won. Look what I got, she exclaimed, slipping it onto her finger. It matches the ones for my costume. The spell broken, Emma and Noah both leaned back, returning to the safe territory of Halloween plans and pizza preferences. But something had shifted, a deepening of connection that Emma could feel settling into her bones like warmth after too many years of cold. Saturday dawned clear and bright, the kind of crisp autumn day that painted the world in shades of gold and amber. Emma stood in front of her closet, discarding outfit after outfit. Too formal, too casual, too trying too hard, too not trying enough. She finally settled on a simple blue sweater that brought out her eyes and dark jeans that were presentable without being stuffy. Her hands trembled as she applied minimal makeup, covering the shadows under her eyes from a night of restless sleep. Noah arrived precisely when he promised, dressed in what Emma assumed was his version of formal, clean jeans without workshop dust, a button-down shirt that looked freshly ironed, and a leather jacket that softened his carpenter's frame. You look nice, he said, his eyes warming as they took her in. I've changed 4 times, Emma admitted, grabbing her purse. Is it too much? Not enough? I don't know what a birth mother is supposed to wear to meet the daughter she gave away. Noah stepped closer, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You look like yourself. That's exactly what Lily needs to see. The drive to Des Moines passed in a blur of autumn scenery and quiet conversation. Noah kept the topics light, telling stories about particularly challenging woodworking projects and the eccentric clients who commissioned them. Emma was grateful for the distraction, though her anxiety mounted with each mile marker. When they reached the outskirts of Des Moines, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Beth Morrison. We're running about 15 minutes late. David had a work call he couldn't reschedule. See you soon. Emma relayed the message to Noah, who nodded. That gives us time to find parking and get settled. Maybe even order a drink to calm your nerves. The restaurant was a family-friendly place with rustic decor and a menu that promised American comfort food with a twist. They were shown to a table by a window overlooking a small courtyard where pumpkins and hay bales created a seasonal display. Emma couldn't sit still, alternating between adjusting the silverware and smoothing invisible wrinkles from her sweater. Noah reached across the table and captured her restless hands. Breathe, he said softly. Just breathe. Emma tried to follow his advice, drawing air deep into her lungs and releasing it slowly. She was mid-exhale when the door to the restaurant opened and her breath caught in her throat. A tall man with salt and pepper hair held the door for a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Between them stood a girl on the cusp of adolescence, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, her eyes, Emma's eyes, scanning the restaurant with nervous anticipation. Lily. Time seemed to slow, stretching like taffy as Emma rose from her seat, her legs unsteady beneath her. Noah's hand at the small of her back steadied her as the Morrison family approached their table. Emma? Beth's voice was warm, reaching across the years, as if they were old friends rather than strangers connected by the most intimate of bonds. Emma couldn't speak. Her eyes were locked on Lily, drinking in every detail. The girl was tall for 13, with Emma's eyes and mouth, but a confidence in her posture that Emma had never possessed at that age. She wore jeans and a purple sweater, a delicate silver necklace with a treble clef pendant catching the light. "Hello?" Emma finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. David Morrison stepped forward, extending his hand. His grip was firm, his expression guarded, but not hostile. "David Morrison, this is my wife, Beth." Beth's handshake was warmer, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's good to finally meet you, Emma. We've heard a lot about you over the years." Emma swallowed hard, not sure what to make of that statement. Before she could respond, Noah stepped forward. "Noah Walsh," he said, shaking hands with both Morrisons. "I'm a friend of Emma's." Emma was grateful for his deliberate vagueness. Friend. Not date, not boyfriend, nothing that would complicate this already fraught meeting. And then there was nowhere else to look. No more introductions to hide behind. Emma turned to Lily, who stood slightly behind her parents, her fingers worrying the hem of her sweater, in a gesture so familiar it made Emma's heart clench. "Hi, Lily," she said softly. "I'm Emma." Lily studied her face with an intensity that made Emma want to look away, to hide, to run. But she held her ground, allowing herself to be seen by the child she'd carried but never known. "You have my eyes," Lily said finally, her voice higher than Emma had expected, still childlike despite her mature appearance. "Or I guess I have yours." A small, surprised laugh escaped Emma. Of all the things she'd imagined Lily might say, this hadn't been one of them. "Yes, you do." The initial awkwardness gradually eased as they settled at the table, ordered drinks, and navigated the menu. Noah sat slightly apart, giving them space while remaining a reassuring presence. Emma was acutely aware of his quiet support, the way he deflected attention from her when she needed a moment to compose herself, the subtle encouraging nods when she faltered. The conversation moved in fits and starts, skimming over safe topics: Lily's school, her love of music, the Morrisons' home in Ames. David remained reserved, his eyes watchful, as if assessing whether Emma posed a threat to his family's happiness. Beth was warmer, steering the conversation with the skill of someone accustomed to navigating difficult social situations. But it was Lily who surprised Emma most. The girl asked direct questions, her curiosity seemingly untainted by bitterness. "When did you decide to give me up?" she asked as their entrees arrived, the question landing like a stone in still water. David made a small noise of protest. "Lily, we talked about this. Some questions might be too personal for a first meeting." Lily's expression was stubborn, so like Emma's own that it was startling. "But I want to know." Emma set down her fork, meeting Lily's gaze directly. "It's okay, she deserves answers." She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I was 16 when I found out I was pregnant. My boyfriend at the time wanted nothing to do with it, and my parents—" She paused, the old pain still sharp after all these years. "They made it clear I was on my own. I considered all my options, but in the end, I knew I couldn't give you the life you deserved." Lily absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. "Were you scared?" Emma nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Terrified, but not of you, never of you. I was scared of Vanya failing you, of not being enough." Lily glanced at her parents, then back to Emma. "Do you regret it, giving me away?" The question hung in the air, loaded with potential for hurt no matter how Emma answered. She could feel Noah's attention, steady and supportive, giving her courage. "I regret that I couldn't be what you needed then," she said finally. "I regret missing your first steps, your first words, your first day of school. But I don't regret giving you parents who could love and provide for you in ways I couldn't." She glanced at Beth and David, including them in her answer. I don't regret the life you've had, even if I wasn't part of it. Something shifted in David's expression, a softening around the eyes that suggested her words had reached him. Beth dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, clearly moved. Lily studied Emma's face for a long moment, then asked the question Emma had been dreading most. Why didn't you ever try to find me? Emma's hands trembled in her lap. I was ashamed. I thought you'd be better off without me complicating your life. And I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid I'd disrupt the family you had. She swallowed hard. It was easier to run than to face the possibility of your rejection. Lily nodded slowly, processing this. Then with the directness of youth, she changed course entirely. Do you like music? I play violin. The conversation flowed more easily after that, moving between serious topics and lighter ones with the natural rhythm of people getting to know each other. Emma learned that Lily excelled at math and science, but struggled with history, that she'd been playing violin since she was 6 and dreamed of joining a symphony someday, that she was allergic to cats but loved dogs, especially golden retrievers. Small details that stitched together a picture of the daughter she'd never known. As the meal wound down, Beth excused herself to the restroom, and Noah engaged David in a conversation about woodworking, leaving Emma and Lily in a bubble of relative privacy. Lily leaned forward, her voice lowered. They're worried, you know, Mom and Dad. They think you might want to take me away from them. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Lily, no. That's not, I know, Lily interrupted. I told them that's not how adoption works. Once the papers are signed, that's it, right? Emma nodded, relieved but also strangely sad at how matter-of-factly Lily stated this legal reality. Right, they're your parents, legally and in every way that matters. Lily studied her with those familiar eyes. But you're my mother too, in a different way. The simple acknowledgement brought tears to Emma's eyes. Yes, in a different way. Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote this for you. Mom said I should wait, but I want you to have it now. Emma accepted the paper with trembling fingers, carefully unfolding it to reveal a letter written in neat, girlish handwriting. You don't have to read it now, Lily said quickly, suddenly shy, but I wanted you to know I don't hate you. I was angry sometimes and confused, but I never hated you. Emma couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She nodded, carefully tucking the letter into her purse, a treasure more valuable than anything she owned. Before she could find her voice, Beth returned, followed closely by David and Noah. The moment of private connection passed, but something had shifted between them, a fragile bridge beginning to form across the chasm of years. As they prepared to leave, exchanging awkward handshakes and tentative plans for future contact, Lily suddenly stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Emma's waist. The embrace was brief, almost fleeting, but it sent a shock of emotion through Emma so powerful she had to lock her knees to remain standing. Thank you for meeting me, Lily whispered before stepping back to her parents' side. Emma could only nod, too overwhelmed to form words. Noah's hand found the small of her back, a steady pressure keeping her grounded as they said their goodbyes and walked to the parking lot. She managed to hold herself together until they reached the car. But once inside, the emotion she'd been containing broke free in great, heaving sobs. Noah pulled her into his arms across the center console, holding her while she cried, stroking her hair and murmuring soft reassurances. She's amazing, Emma finally managed between sobs. She's so perfect, and I had nothing to do with it. Noah pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. That's not true. You gave her life. You gave her to people who could provide what she needed. Those were your choices, Emma. Don't discount them. The drive back to Cedar Falls passed in comfortable silence. Emma lost in thoughts of the meeting, reading and rereading Lily's letter until she had memorized every word. It was only as they neared the town limits that Noah broke the quiet. What happens now? Emma folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into her purse. Beth suggested we take it slow. Phone calls, maybe video chats. If that goes well, more visits. She glanced at Noah, suddenly uncertain. Would that be okay with you? Noah looked confused. Why wouldn't it be okay with me? Emma hesitated, struggling to articulate her fears. This changes things. I'm not just Emma the nurse with a quiet life anymore. I'm Emma the birth mother with a complicated relationship with a teenager and her adoptive family. That's a lot to take on for someone who just wanted a normal date. Noah was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the road. Then he pulled over onto the shoulder, putting the car in park and turning to face her fully. Emma, listen to me. I haven't wanted normal since Julia died. Normal doesn't exist for people like us, people who've had their lives torn apart and had to stitch them back together with whatever threads we could find. His voice was low, intense. I want real. I want honest. I want someone who understands that life is messy and painful and beautiful all at once. He reached out, cupping her cheek in his calloused palm. Your relationship with Lily isn't baggage. It's part of who you are, part of what makes you the woman sitting beside me right now. The woman I'm falling for, complicated history and all. Emma's breath caught at the admission. Noah, you don't have to say anything, he said quickly. It's too soon, I know that. I just need you to understand that I'm not scared off by your past. If anything, seeing you face it head-on today made me admire you even more. Emma leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. I don't know what I did to deserve having you walk into my life right when I needed you most. Noah smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Maybe you don't have to deserve it. Maybe it's just grace. The word hung between them, unfamiliar but resonant. Grace, the unmerited gift that Emma had been denying herself for 13 years. The possibility that forgiveness from Lily, from herself, might not have to be earned but simply accepted. As they drove the final miles into Cedar Falls, Emma felt something shifting inside her, a loosening of the knots that had bound her for so long. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential for both joy and pain, but for the first time in years, she wasn't facing it alone. She had Noah, with his steady hands and unwavering support. She had Sophie, with her innocent wisdom and magical stuffed elephant, and now in some small but significant way, she had Lily too, not as the daughter she'd raised, but as the girl she was getting to know, one careful step at a time. It wasn't the life she'd imagined for herself. It was messier, more complicated, more fragile. But as Noah's hand found hers across the center console, his fingers intertwining with hers in a silent promise, Emma realized it might also be more beautiful than anything she could have planned. 3 weeks after meeting Lily, Emma found herself settling into a new rhythm. Tuesday and Thursday evenings were reserved for video calls with her daughter. Still a strange thought. That word, daughter, applied to the bright, curious girl who was slowly becoming part of her life. They'd established boundaries, with Beth Morrison usually present at the beginning of each call before giving Lily privacy to talk with Emma directly. These conversations had become the anchors of Emma's week, bright spots she looked forward to with a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy. Lily was eager to share every detail of her life, school projects, violin practice, friend drama, as if making up for lost time. Emma's relationship with Noah had deepened too, moving from tentative dates to comfortable familiarity. They still hadn't put a label on what they were becoming, but Emma found herself spending more evenings at his house than her own apartment, helping Sophie with homework and sharing quiet conversations with Noah after the little girl went to bed. It was during one of these evening visits that Emma first noticed the change in Sophie's behavior. The normally talkative child had been subdued all through dinner, pushing pasta around her plate rather than eating it. Everything okay, sweetheart? Noah asked, exchanging a concerned glance with Emma. Sophie shrugged, a gesture so non-committal it set off warning bells. Fine, Noah tried again. How was school today? Did you get your science test back? It was okay. Another shrug. I got an A. That's wonderful, Emma said, trying to infuse enthusiasm into the conversation. You worked so hard on studying the solar system. Sophie looked up, her expression unreadable. Ms. Hayes, are you my dad's girlfriend now? The blunt question caught Emma off guard. She looked to Noah, unsure how to respond, but he seemed equally surprised by the direct inquiry. Emma began, then paused, wanting to be honest without overstepping. Your dad and I care about each other a lot. We're still figuring out exactly what that means. Sophie nodded solemnly, processing this information with a gravity that seemed too mature for her 8 years. Daddy Parker's mom says you're a bad influence, she said finally, the words falling like stones into still water. She told Mrs. Wilson at pickup that my dad shouldn't let me be around you. Noah's face darkened. Sophie, That's not something you need to worry about. Mrs. Parker doesn't know what she's talking about. But she said Ms. Hayes abandoned her baby and that good mothers don't do that. Sophie's voice was small, uncertain. She said you're just like my mom, except my mom didn't have a choice about leaving. The room fell silent, the only sound the ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen. Emma felt as if all the air had been sucked from her lungs. She'd known there might be whispers. Cedar Falls was small enough that news traveled fast, but she hadn't anticipated the cruelty of adults using a child to deliver their judgment. Noah pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Sophie, that's enough. Go upstairs and start your bath. I'll be up in a few minutes. But Now please. His voice was firm, brooking no argument. Sophie slid from her chair, casting an apologetic glance at Emma before trudging up the stairs. When they heard the bathroom door close, Noah turned to Emma, his expression anguished. Emma, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's fine, Emma said automatically, though they both knew it wasn't. She began clearing the dishes, needing physical activity to steady herself. It's a small town. People talk. Noah followed her to the kitchen, taking the plates from her trembling hands and setting them in the sink. It's not fine. Daddy Parker has always been a gossip, but dragging Sophie into it crosses a line. Emma leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. What did you expect, Noah? I'm the woman who gave away her baby. In their eyes, that makes me selfish, heartless, exactly the kind of person who shouldn't be around impressionable children. That's not true, Noah's voice was fierce. You made an impossible choice at 16. Anyone with half a brain would understand that. But that's not the story people want to hear, is it? Emma ran a hand through her hair, frustration building. They want simple narratives, good mothers and bad mothers, with nothing in between. Noah stepped closer, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. Then we'll tell them the real story, the complicated one. Emma shook her head. It's not that simple. Sophie's confused, and I don't blame her. This is exactly what I was afraid of, that my past would hurt the people I care about. Sophie will be fine. She's trying to process information she doesn't fully understand. Noah's thumbs traced soothing circles on her shoulders. Let me talk to her, explain things in a way she can grasp. Emma nodded, knowing he was right, but unable to shake the feeling that a small, perfect bubble had just burst. I should go. You need time with Sophie. Emma, really, it's okay. She forced a smile. Call me tomorrow? Noah looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. Tomorrow. The drive back to her apartment was a blur, tears making the streetlights blur into streaks of gold against the dark. By the time Emma reached her door, her composure had crumbled entirely. She collapsed onto her couch, body racked with silent sobs, as Sophie's innocent questions echoed in her mind. Her phone buzzed with a text from Noah. Sophie wants to talk to you. She feels terrible. Can we call? Emma wiped her eyes, considering. Part of her wanted to retreat, to protect herself from further hurt. But the larger part, the part that had been learning to stop running, knew that facing this head-on was the only way forward. Yes, she typed back. The video call came through moments later, Sophie's small face filling the screen, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Ms. Hayes? Her voice was tentative, wobbling slightly. I'm really sorry I made you sad. Emma swallowed hard. Oh, sweetheart, you didn't make me sad. You were just asking honest questions about things you heard. Sophie glanced off screen, presumably at Noah, then back to Emma. Daddy explained that when you were my age plus 8 more years, you had a baby, but you weren't ready to be a mom. So you found grown-ups who were ready, and that was a brave choice. Fresh tears pricked at Emma's eyes. But these were different, touched by the simple way Noah had framed her decision for his daughter's understanding. That's right, Emma managed. It was the hardest choice I ever made, but I wanted my baby to have the best life possible. Sophie considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. And now your baby is 13, and her name is Lily, and she plays violin? Emma nodded. Yes. And she's not mad at you for finding her a different mom and dad? She was confused for a long time, Emma said carefully. She had questions, just like you do, but no, she's not mad. We're getting to know each other now. Sophie's expression cleared somewhat. Daddy says Mrs. Parker was being a bully, And we don't listen to bullies because they talk about things they don't understand. Emma couldn't help but smile at Noah's straightforward parenting. Your dad is a very wise man. The wisest, Sophie agreed solemnly. Then with the mercurial mood shifts of childhood, she brightened. Can Lily come visit sometime? I could show her my rock collection and Mr. Trunks. The request, so innocent and accepting after the tension of the evening, lodged in Emma's throat like a physical thing. Maybe someday, if Lily and her parents are comfortable with that. Noah appeared in the frame then, his hand on Sophie's shoulder. Okay, kiddo, time to get ready for bed. Say goodnight to Mrs. Hayes. Good night, I'm sorry again. Sophie waved enthusiastically before bounding off screen. Noah's face filled the frame, his expression weary but relieved. You okay? Emma nodded, though okay felt like an overstatement. Better. Thank you for talking to her. Always. His voice was warm, steady. We're in this together, Emma, whatever this is. After they hung up, Emma sat in the darkness of her apartment, turning the events of the evening over in her mind. The incident with Sophie had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, not because of the girl's questions, but because it confirmed her fears about how the town viewed her. For 3 years, she'd lived in Cedar Falls as a ghost, leaving no impression, forming no meaningful connections. Now that she was finally putting down roots, with Noah, with Sophie, with her rekindled relationship with Lily, the past she'd been running from had caught up with her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Emma's mood as she prepared for her shift at the clinic. She'd slept poorly, dreams filled with disapproving faces and Sophie's confused questions. The nurse's break room was buzzing with conversation when she arrived, but it fell suspiciously silent as she entered. Dr. Patel, the clinic's director, stood by the coffee machine, his expression unusually grave. Emma, could I see you in my office? A cold knot formed in Emma's stomach as she followed him down the hallway. Dr. Patel was normally warm, even jovial, but today his posture was stiff with formality. Please sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. He remained standing, adjusting his glasses in a nervous gesture she'd never seen before. Emma, I've received some concerns from patients about your presence at the clinic. Emma's fingers tightened on the arms of her chair. Concerns? Dr. Patel looked uncomfortable. It seems there have been rumors circulating about your personal history. Normally, I wouldn't give credence to gossip, but when multiple patients express reservations about having their children treated by someone they perceive as, he trailed off, clearly searching for a diplomatic phrase. Someone who gave up her baby? Emma supplied, her voice flat. Dr. Patel winced. I wouldn't have put it that way, but yes. In a small community like Cedar Falls, perception matters. The clinic depends on the trust of our patients. I've been working here for nearly 3 years, Emma said, struggling to keep her voice steady. My work has always been exemplary. You've said so yourself in every evaluation. And it still is, Dr. Patel hastened to assure her. This isn't about your performance. It's about the comfort level of our patients, particularly those with young children. Emma felt as if she'd been slapped. So what exactly are you saying? Dr. Patel finally sat, leaning across the desk with an expression of practiced sympathy that made Emma's skin crawl. I'm not asking you to leave, Emma, but I do think it might be best if you primarily handled adult patients for the time being until this situation blows over. The implication was clear. She was considered unfit to care for children because of a choice she'd made at 16. A wave of humiliation washed over her, followed quickly by anger. And if I refuse? Dr. Patel's expression hardened slightly. I hope it won't come to that. You're a valuable member of our team, but I have to consider what's best for the clinic as a whole. Emma stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'll need to think about this. Of course. Dr. Patel's relief was palpable. Take today off with pay. We can discuss further steps tomorrow. Emma walked out of the clinic in a daze, the rain that had been threatening all morning finally beginning to fall. She sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, and screamed, a raw, primal sound that tore from her throat and filled the enclosed space. Years of carefully constructed normalcy, of keeping her head down and her past buried, unraveling because of small-town gossip and judgment. The unfairness of it burned like acid in her chest. She drove aimlessly for nearly an hour before finding herself outside Noah's woodworking shop. The closed sign hung in the window. He had mentioned a delivery in Des Moines today, but the side door was propped open, country music drifting from within. Emma hesitated, then walked through the door, following the sound of a sander in the back workshop. Noah stood at his workbench, safety goggles pushed up on his forehead, dust covering his flannel shirt as he shaped a piece of cherry wood. He looked up at her footsteps, his expression immediately shifting from concentration to concern. Emma, what's wrong? Why aren't you at the clinic? The simple questions broke what remained of her composure. They don't want me working with children anymore, she said, her voice breaking. Apparently, I'm a danger to impressionable young minds because I gave my baby away. Noah set down his tools, crossing the room in 3 long strides to pull her into his arms. He smelled of sawdust and coffee, his embrace solid and grounding as Emma fought against fresh tears. Who said that? His voice rumbled against her ear, tight with controlled anger. Dr. Patel, he said patients have been complaining that they don't trust me with their children. Emma pulled back slightly, wiping at her eyes. It's Detty Parker, I know it is. She volunteers at the clinic every Wednesday. She must have been spreading rumors. Noah's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. You're one of the best nurses they have. It doesn't matter. In a town this size, perception is reality. Emma's laugh was bitter. I should have known better than to think I could have a normal life here. Maybe it's time to move on, start fresh somewhere else. Noah went still, his hands dropping from her shoulders. Is that what you want? To leave? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither had voiced aloud. Leaving Cedar Falls wouldn't just mean leaving her job. It would mean leaving Noah and Sophie, the tentative family they were building. It would mean complicating the fragile connection she'd established with Lily, who lived just an hour away. I don't know what I want, Emma admitted. I just know I can't keep living like this, being judged for a decision I made when I was barely more than a child myself. Noah stepped back, running a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of sawdust. So your solution is to run again? After everything we've talked about? After you've finally stopped running from Lily? His words stung, all the more because they contained a kernel of truth. That's not fair. This isn't about running. It's about standing up for myself, refusing to be defined by my past. And how is leaving standing up for yourself? Noah's voice rose slightly. That's letting them win, letting them drive you away because you don't fit their narrow definition of what a woman, a mother should be. Emma felt her own anger rising to match his. Easy for you to say. You're the town's favorite single dad, the tragic widower raising his daughter alone. No one questions your right to be around children. The moment the words left her mouth, Emma regretted them. Noah's face went blank, all emotion wiped clean in a way that was more frightening than any anger. Is that what you think? That this has been easy for me? His voice was dangerously quiet. Do you have any idea how many times I've been told Sophie needs a mother, as if Julia was replaceable? How many pitying looks I've endured, how many casseroles I've accepted while people whispered about whether I was capable of raising a daughter alone. Emma felt her anger deflate, replaced by shame. Noah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... No, you're right about one thing. Noah turned away, picking up a piece of sandpaper and running it over the wood with short, aggressive strokes. I haven't faced the same judgment you have. No one questions my decisions as a parent because society holds mothers and fathers to different standards. It's not fair, and it's not right. He set the sandpaper down, his shoulders slumping. But running away isn't the answer, Emma. Not for you, not for Lily, and not for... He trailed off, but the unspoken words hung in the air. Not for us. Emma crossed the workshop, placing a hand on his back, feeling the tension in his muscles. I'm scared, Noah. I'm scared of being hurt, of Sophie being hurt, of the whole town turning against us because of who I am and what I did. Noah turned to face her, his expression softening. I know, but you're stronger than you think. We both are. He took her hands in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Let me talk to Detty Parker. Maybe if she understood the full story, heard about the actual Emma Hayes instead of the rumor she's spreading. Emma shook her head. People like that don't want to understand. They want simple stories where they can be the heroes and someone else can be the villain. Then we'll tell our own story, Noah insisted, not just to Dedi, but to everyone who matters. Dr. Patel, the school, the whole damn town if necessary. The determination in his voice kindled something in Emma's chest. Not quite hope, but a spark of defiance. You really think that would make a difference? I don't know, Noah admitted, but I do know that running away won't solve anything. The problem will just follow you to the next town and the next until you stand your ground and refuse to be ashamed of a choice you made with love. Emma leaned into him, drawing strength from his steady presence. When did you get so wise? Noah's laugh rumbled against her cheek. I've had a lot of practice picking myself up after life knocked me down, and I've learned that the things worth having are rarely easy. They stood like that for a long moment, the sound of rain on the metal roof creating a cocoon of intimacy around them. Then Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the spell. She pulled it out, expecting a text from the clinic, but instead found a message from Beth Morrison. Lily had a difficult day at school. She's asking to talk to you. Are you available for a quick call? Emma showed the message to Noah, who nodded encouragingly. Go ahead, I need to clean up here anyway. Emma stepped into Noah's office, a small room off the main workshop with a desk cluttered with sketches and invoices. She settled into his chair and dialed Beth's number, her heart racing with concern. Beth answered on the second ring. Emma, thank you for calling back so quickly. Of course, is Lily okay? Beth sighed, a sound heavy with parental worry. Physically, yes. Emotionally, I'm not so sure. She had an incident at school today. Another student found out about her searching for you and made some unkind comments. Emma's stomach clenched. What kind of comments? The usual adolescent cruelty, that Lily wasn't wanted, that's why you gave her away. That if her real mother didn't want her, no one would. Beth's voice hardened with protective anger. The school called us immediately, and the other student has been disciplined, but Lily's pretty shaken up. Can I talk to her? Emma asked, her own hurt temporarily forgotten in the face of Lily's pain. She's waiting right here. There was a rustling sound as the phone changed hands, then Lily's voice, smaller and more vulnerable than Emma had heard it before. Emma? I'm here, sweetheart. The endearment slipped out naturally, and Emma didn't try to call it back. I heard you had a rough day. Amber Collins said you gave me away because I was a mistake, Lily said, her voice catching. She said if my own mother didn't want me, no one else would either. Emma's free hand clenched into a fist, protective rage surging through her veins. Lily, listen to me. You were never, ever a mistake. The circumstances of your conception weren't planned, but you yourself were wanted and loved from the moment I knew you existed. Then why did you give me away? The question wasn't accusatory, just confused, hurt. Emma closed her eyes, searching for the right words. Because at 16, love wasn't enough. I couldn't give you a stable home, an education, all the opportunities you deserved. I gave you to Beth and David because I loved you too much to let my limitations become yours. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then in a small voice, do you ever wish you'd kept me? The question pierced Emma's heart like a physical pain. Every day, she whispered. But then I see the amazing young woman you're becoming, with parents who adore you and opportunities I never could have provided, and I know it was the right choice, not the easy one, but the right one. I wish the kids at school understood that, Lily said, sniffling slightly. They act like I'm broken or something. You are absolutely not broken, Emma said fiercely. You're extraordinary. You're smart and talented and kind. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth your time. That's what Dad said too, Lily admitted, a hint of a smile in her voice. Your dad is a very smart man, Emma said, echoing what she'd told Sophie the night before. And he and your mom love you more than anything in the world. So do I, in my own way. The admission hung in the air between them, the first time Emma had spoken those words aloud to her daughter. For a terrifying moment, she feared she'd overstepped, moved too fast. I think I love you too, Lily said finally. Not like Mom and Dad, but differently. Is that okay? Emma's eyes filled with tears. That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's perfect. When the call ended, Emma sat in Noah's office for several minutes, letting the conversation settle around her like falling leaves. The parallel between Lily's situation at school and her own in Cedar Falls wasn't lost on her. Both judged for a decision made 13 years ago, both facing the narrow-mindedness of people who couldn't or wouldn't understand the complexity of love and sacrifice. But where she had considered running, Lily was standing her ground, supported by parents who loved her and a birth mother who was finally learning to speak her truth. If a 13-year-old could face her bullies with such courage, how could Emma do any less? She found Noah in the workshop, putting away his tools with the methodical precision of a man who respected his craft. He looked up as she entered, his expression questioning. "Everything okay with Lily?" Emma nodded, a new resolve straightening her spine. "She's dealing with some bullying at school. Kids found out she was adopted, that she'd been searching for me." Noah's expression darkened. "That's rough. Is she all right?" "She will be. She's stronger than she knows." Emma moved closer, determination replacing the hurt and confusion of earlier. "You were right. Running away doesn't solve anything. It just postpones the inevitable confrontation with truth." Noah's smile was slow, warm with approval. "So what do you want to do?" Emma took a deep breath, the plan forming as she spoke. "I want to talk to Dr. Patel, explain my side of the story. Not just about giving Lily up, but about reconnecting with her, about the relationship we're building now. And if that doesn't change his mind, then I'll find another job, but I'll do it on my terms, not because I was driven away by gossip and judgment." Emma's voice strengthened with each word. "I'm not ashamed of the choice I made. It was made with love, and I won't let anyone twist it into something shameful." Noah's eyes shone with pride as he pulled her into his arms. There she is, the Emma Hayes I've been getting to know, the one who doesn't run. Emma leaned into his embrace, drawing strength from his unwavering support. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, changing minds rarely was, but for the first time, she felt equal to the challenge. Not because she was certain of success, but because she was finally certain of herself. As they stood in the workshop, rain drumming on the roof above them, Emma realized that the scars she'd carried for so long were finally beginning to speak a new language, not of shame and regret, but of courage and love, and the possibility of redemption. The following morning, Emma sat in her car outside the Cedar Falls Medical Clinic, gathering her courage. She'd spent the night drafting what she wanted to say to Dr. Patel, rehearsing arguments and anticipating objections. Now, dressed in her street clothes rather than scrubs, she felt like a visitor to her own workplace. Through the clinic windows, she could see the waiting room already filling with patients. Mrs. Chen with her chronic arthritis, the Wilson twins for their kindergarten vaccinations, regular people with regular problems who might never know the storm raging in their nurse's life. Emma took a deep breath and stepped out of her car. The receptionist looked up in surprise as she entered. "Emma, I thought you were taking today off." "I need to speak with Dr. Patel," Emma said, her voice steadier than she expected. "Is he in yet?" "In his office," the receptionist replied, watching curiously as Emma walked down the hallway. Dr. Patel was reviewing charts when she knocked on his doorframe. He looked up, surprise quickly masked by professional detachment. "Emma, I wasn't expecting you today." "I know, but what I have to say couldn't wait." She closed the door behind her and took the seat across from his desk without being invited. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday." Dr. Patel set down his pen, giving her his full attention. And I've decided I won't be relegated to treating only adult patients." Emma leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I'm a good nurse, Dr. Patel. I care deeply about every patient who walks through those doors, regardless of their age. Nothing in my personal history changes that." Dr. Patel sighed, removing his glasses and pinching the bridge of his nose. "Emma, I understand your frustration, but the situation is delicate. The perception of our patients is based on rumors and half-truths," Emma interrupted, "not on who I really am or the choice I actually made." "Perhaps, but let me tell you the whole story," Emma said, her voice softening. "Not the gossip version being spread around town, but what really happened." Dr. Patel hesitated, then gestured for her to continue, curiosity evident in his expression. Emma told him everything: her pregnancy at 16, her parents' rejection, the agonizing decision to place Lily for adoption. She explained about the letters she'd written every year, about Lily finding her, about the cautious relationship they were building now. I've spent 13 years running from that decision, she concluded, hiding it, being ashamed of it. But I'm not running anymore because I finally understand that giving Lily to a family who could provide what I couldn't wasn't abandonment. It was the most loving choice I could make at the time. Dr. Patel was silent for a long moment after she finished, his expression thoughtful. I had no idea, he said finally. The version I heard was considerably less nuanced. I imagine it was, Emma said dryly. Gossip rarely captures the complexity of real lives. Dr. Patel steepled his fingers, considering. While I appreciate your candor, Emma, the fact remains that several patients have expressed concerns. As the clinic director, I can't simply dismiss their feelings, even if they're based on misinformation. Emma had anticipated this response. I understand that, but rather than hiding me away from children, which only reinforces the idea that I've done something wrong, what if we address the misinformation directly? What do you suggest? Let me do my job with all patience. If anyone expresses concerns, invite them to speak with me personally. I'm not ashamed of my story anymore, and I'm willing to share it with anyone who genuinely wants to understand. Emma met his gaze steadily. And if Detty Parker or anyone else continues to spread harmful rumors, then you can decide whether protecting a nurse who's served this clinic faithfully for 3 years is worth standing up to gossip. Dr. Patel drummed his fingers on the desk, weighing her words. And if I say no, if I insist on the arrangement I proposed yesterday? Emma took a deep breath. Then I'll tender my resignation, effective immediately. And I'll be clear with anyone who asks that I left because the clinic values rumor over truth, perception over reality. It was a bold move, perhaps too bold, but Emma was done with half measures. To her surprise, Dr. Patel's expression shifted from concern to something that looked almost like respect. That won't be necessary, he said after a long pause. You've been an exemplary nurse, Emma. I'd be foolish to lose you over town gossip. He replaced his glasses, his professional demeanor returning. We'll try your approach. Continue with your regular duties, and we'll address any concerns directly as they arise. Relief washed over Emma like a physical wave. Thank you, Dr. Patel. Don't thank me yet, he cautioned. This may not be easy. Small towns can be unforgiving places. I know, Emma said, rising from her chair, but I'm stronger than I thought. As she turned to leave, Dr. Patel called after her. Emma, for what it's worth, I think what you did at 16 took remarkable courage, and what you're doing now takes even more. The words followed her like a talisman as she walked through the clinic to the locker room. She hadn't won the war, not by a long shot, but this small victory felt significant, the first step in reclaiming her narrative from those who had twisted into something shameful. The morning passed in a blur of patients and procedures, Emma moving through her duties with practiced efficiency. If her colleagues had heard about her conversation with Dr. Vera Patel, they gave no indication, treating her with the same professional courtesy as always. It was during her lunch break, as she sat alone in the break room reviewing charts, that the confrontation she'd been half expecting finally occurred. Detty Parker strode through the door, clipboard in hand, her volunteer badge prominently displayed on her tailored blouse. She stopped short at the sight of Emma, surprise quickly morphing into thinly veiled disdain. Ms. Hayes, I didn't expect to see you today. Emma set down her sandwich, meeting the older woman's gaze directly. Mrs. Parker, volunteering again? Someone has to organize the vaccine drive. Detty sniffed, making a show of shuffling papers on her clipboard. Children's health has always been my primary concern. The implication hung in the air between them, unmistakable in its judgment. Emma might have let it pass a week ago, might have ducked her head and retreated from the confrontation. But not today. How interesting, she said, her voice deceptively casual. I understand you've been quite concerned about my influence on children lately. Detty's eyes widened fractionally, then narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Emma folded her hands on the table, the picture of calm despite her racing heart. You've been telling parents that I abandoned my baby, that I'm not fit to be around children, including Noah Walsh's daughter. Detty drew herself up, indignation radiating from every pore. I merely expressed concern about a situation I found troubling. As a mother and grandmother, I have a right to my opinion. Opinion is one thing. Spreading harmful rumors that affect my professional reputation and hurt innocent children is another. Emma's voice remained even, controlled. Do you know what Sophie Walsh asked her father after hearing what you said? Whether I was a bad person for giving my daughter to a family who could care for her properly. A flicker of something, guilt, uncertainty, crossed Deddy's face before she regained her composure. Children often misunderstand adult conversations, and adults often misunderstand situations they know nothing about. Emma stood, needing to be on eye level with the woman who had appointed herself Cedar Falls' moral arbiter. You don't know me, Mrs. Parker. You don't know what led to my decision at 16, or the kind of relationship I'm building with my daughter now. Deddy's lips thinned into a disapproving line. I know enough. A mother who gives away her child, placed her for adoption, Emma corrected firmly, because I loved her enough to want better for her than a teenage mother with no support could provide. Well, Deddy sniffed again, clearly thrown by Emma's direct confrontation. That may be how you justify it to yourself. It's not justification, it's truth. Emma stepped closer, lowering her voice. And if you continue spreading a different version of that truth around town, especially to impressionable children, I'll be forced to consider it slander against my professional reputation. It was a bluff. Emma had neither the resources nor the inclination for legal action, but it had the desired effect. Deddy took a small step backward, uncertainty flickering across her carefully preserved features. Are you threatening me? I'm asking for basic human decency, Emma replied, to be judged on who I am now, not on a decision I made as a terrified teenager. The standoff might have continued, but the break room door swung open as another nurse entered, breaking the tension. Deddy seized the opportunity to retreat, muttering something about checking the supply closet as she hurried from the room. Emma sank back into her chair, adrenaline leaving her system in a rush that left her slightly shaky. The confrontation hadn't resolved anything. Deddy Parker wasn't the type to admit error or change her mind easily, but it felt significant nonetheless. For the first time, Emma had defended her choice openly, without shame or apology. The feeling of empowerment carried her through the rest of her shift, through routine examinations and minor emergencies, through concerned glances from colleagues who'd witnessed her standoff with the clinic's most influential volunteer. By the time she clocked out, Emma was exhausted but satisfied, like a runner who'd completed a difficult race. She was so preoccupied with her thoughts that she almost missed the text from Noah. How did it go with Dr. Patel? Sophie and I are making lasagna if you want to come over and tell us about your day. The simple invitation brought a smile to her face. The idea of a quiet evening with Noah and Sophie, of belonging somewhere after a day of standing her ground, was exactly what she needed. She was halfway to her car when a voice called her name. Emma turned to find Beth Morrison standing in the clinic parking lot, looking oddly out of place in her tailored pants and elegant sweater. Beth? Emma's surprise was genuine. They hadn't planned a meeting, and Ames was nearly an hour's drive from Cedar Falls. Is everything okay? Is Lily all right? Beth raised a reassuring hand. Lily's fine. She's with David at a violin lesson. She hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. I was hoping we could talk, privately. Emma's concern deepened. Of course, there's a coffee shop around the corner, or we could go to my apartment if you prefer. The coffee shop would be perfect, Beth said, relief evident in her voice. They walked in silence, Beth matching her stride to Emma's shorter one, both women lost in their own thoughts. The coffee shop was nearly empty at this hour, the after-work rush not yet begun. They claimed a table by the window, ordering drinks from a barista who didn't bother to hide her curiosity at the unfamiliar face accompanying the town nurse. Once they were settled with steaming mugs, Beth looked up, her expression resolute. I need to be honest with you about something, Emma. Something I should have told you during our first meeting. A cold knot formed in Emma's stomach. Had she done something wrong? Overstepped some boundary with Lily? David doesn't know I'm here, Beth continued, her fingers tightening around her mug. He'd probably think I was interfering where I shouldn't. But after what happened with Lily at school yesterday, I felt I had to speak with you directly. Emma waited, tension building in her shoulders. Beth took a deep breath. I understand what you're going through right now. not just as Lily's adoptive mother, but on a deeper level. She met Emma's gaze directly. Because 25 years ago, I was in your position. I gave up a baby for adoption. The revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. What? Beth nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. I was 19 in my second year of college. The father wanted nothing to do with the pregnancy, and my parents made it clear they wouldn't support me if I kept the baby. Her gaze drifted to the window, to some distant memory. I placed my son with a family in Minnesota. Open adoption wasn't as common then, but I received photos for the first few years before the communication tapered off. Emma struggled to process this new information. Does Lily know? No, no one does, except David. Beth's expression was a complex mixture of old pain and hard-won peace. It's not that I'm ashamed. I made the best decision I could at the time, but it's private, personal. Why are you telling me this now? Emma asked, though she was beginning to understand. Because I know what it's like to be judged for that decision. Beth's voice was gentle but firm. To have people who've never faced that impossible choice decide that you're selfish, unnatural, unfit to be a mother. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, a profound relief washing over her at being so completely understood. Does it ever stop hurting? No, Beth said honestly, but it changes. It becomes part of you rather than something that defines you. She reached across the table, covering Emma's hand with her own. That's actually why we were so open to Lily meeting you. I know what it means to wonder, to worry, to hope your child understands why you made the choice you did. Did you ever try to find your son? Emma asked, the question slipping out before she could reconsider. Beth shook her head. No, by the time I was ready, too much time had passed. The adoption agency had closed, records were sealed. She shrugged, the gesture carrying the weight of resignation. But I think about him every day. He'd be 25 now. The revelation cast Beth's acceptance of Emma in an entirely new light. What Emma had taken for unusual generosity was actually hard-earned empathy, a bone-deep understanding of the choice she'd made and the pain she carried. Does David, Emma hesitated, unsure how to frame the question, know that's why I was so adamant about adopting? Beth finished for her. Yes, we couldn't have biological children. That's not a secret. But my desire to adopt specifically, to give a child the home mine couldn't have with me, yes, David understands that came from my own experience. Emma sat back, overwhelmed by the layers of connection being revealed. Thank you for telling me, for trusting me with this. I'm telling you because you need to know you're not alone. Beth's expression grew more serious. Lily told us about the bullying at school, and I know small towns can be cruel places for anyone who doesn't fit the accepted narrative. You have no idea, Emma said with a hollow laugh, thinking of Dettie Parker and the whispers that followed her through Cedar Falls. I think I might, Beth countered gently. Before we moved to Ames, we lived in a town even smaller than this one. When people found out we were adopting, the questions were endless. Why adoption? Couldn't we have our own children? Wouldn't we love a biological child more? Emma winced at the familiar ignorance. People can be thoughtless. Or deliberately cruel, Beth agreed, which brings me to the real reason I'm here. She straightened, her expression shifting to something more determined. Lily wants to spend more time with you, not just video calls, but regular visits, weekends maybe. Emma's heart leapt, then just as quickly constricted with worry. Are you sure that's wise? With everything that's happening at her school, with the bullying? That's exactly why it's important, Beth interrupted. Lily needs to see that there's nothing shameful about her origin story, about being adopted, about having a birth mother who loves her enough to reconnect even when it's difficult. Emma hesitated, torn between joy at the prospect of more time with Lily and concern about the complications it might create. What about David? You said he doesn't know you're here. Beth's smile was wry. David is protective. He worries that Lily might get hurt, that you might disappear again, or decide this is all too complicated. She sighed. He doesn't understand that the greatest risk to Lily right now isn't you. It's the shame and secrecy that gives bullies their power. I would never hurt her, Emma said fiercely. Not intentionally. I know that, Beth assured her. And deep down, David does too. He just needs time to adjust to the idea that our family is expanding in ways we never anticipated. In the simple statement, our family is expanding, sent a wave of emotion through Emma so powerful she had to look away, blinking rapidly against unexpected tears. "So what are you suggesting?" she asked when she'd regained her composure. "I think Lily should come stay with you for a weekend," Beth said decisively. "See your life, meet your friends, understand who her birth mother is now, not just who she was at 16. Emma's mind immediately went to Noah and Sophie, to the complication of introducing Lily to what was essentially her new relationship. "That's a big step." "It is," Beth acknowledged, "but I think it's necessary for all of us. David and I have been Lily's whole world for 13 years. It's time she understood that family can be bigger, more complex than that." Emma considered the proposal, turning it over in her mind like one of Noah's wooden creations, examining it from all angles. "When were you thinking?" "Next weekend?" Beth suggested. "David's taking a business trip to Chicago, so it would just be me bringing her on Friday and picking her up Sunday." The implication was clear. Beth was offering to facilitate this visit while David was away, giving him time to adjust to the idea rather than forcing a confrontation. It wasn't ideal, but Emma understood the delicate balance Beth was trying to maintain. "I'd need to talk to Noah," Emma said slowly. "His daughter Sophie has been asking about meeting Lily, but this would affect his weekend too." Beth's eyebrows rose slightly. "Noah is—" "A friend," Emma said automatically, then amended, "More than a friend, it's new but serious." Beth nodded, understanding softening her features. "Of course, talk to him, see what he thinks." "But Emma?" Her expression grew earnest. "This isn't just about Lily, or even about you and Lily. It's about all of us learning to be a different kind of family than we expected." The conversation stayed with Emma as she drove to Noah's house that evening, her mind swirling with possibilities and complications. Beth's revelation had shifted something fundamental in her understanding of Lily's adoptive family, of the complex web of pain and love and hope that had brought them all to this moment. Noah was in the kitchen when she arrived, sleeves rolled up as he layered pasta and sauce in a baking dish. Sophie sat at the counter, carefully tearing lettuce for a salad, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "Emma!" Sophie's face lit up, previous awkwardness apparently forgotten. "Dad said you fought a dragon today." Emma raised an eyebrow at Noah, who had the grace to look sheepish. "I may have used a metaphor to explain standing up for yourself," he admitted, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "How did it go? With Dr. Patel, I mean." "Better than I expected," Emma said, setting her purse on a chair. "He's letting me keep my regular duties, and will address any concerns directly as they arise." Noah's smile was warm with pride. "See, I told you he'd listen to reason." "And did you really fight Mrs. Parker?" Sophie asked, eyes wide with admiration. "Dad says she's like a dragon because she breathes fire at people she doesn't like." Emma laughed despite herself. "I wouldn't call it fighting. We had a frank discussion." "That's adult speak for fighting," Sophie declared with the confidence of the young. "Did you win?" "I don't think there are winners and losers in conversations," Emma hedged, not wanting to oversimplify the complicated standoff with Deddy. "But I did make my position clear." Noah set the lasagna in the oven and crossed to Emma, dropping a quick kiss on her forehead. "I'm proud of you. Standing your ground couldn't have been easy." The simple gesture of affection, offered so naturally in front of Sophie, warmed Emma from the inside out. It spoke of a comfort level, an integration into their lives that she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. "There's something else," she said, glancing at Sophie, who was now arranging cherry tomatoes in the salad with artistic precision. "Beth Morrison came to see me today." Noah's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Lily's mom? What did she want?" Emma hesitated, aware of Sophie's curious gaze. "She wants Lily to spend next weekend with me, here, in Cedar Falls." Noah absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. "That's a big step." "That's what I said," Emma smiled ruefully. "But Beth thinks it's important for Lily to see my life here, especially after the bullying incident at her school." "Lily's coming here." Sophie's excitement was palpable. "To visit? Can I show her my rock collection and Mr. Trunks and my treehouse?" Emma exchanged a glance with Noah, silently asking if this was okay, if she was overstepping. His slight nod gave her the courage to continue. Would that be okay with you, Sophie? If Lily came to visit and you showed her around? Yes, Sophie bounced on her stool. I've never met anyone who was adopted before. Does she look like you? Does she like rocks? How old is she again? The barrage of questions made Emma laugh. She's 13, and yes, she does look a bit like me. I don't know if she likes rocks, but you can ask her yourself if she visits. When, Sophie corrected firmly. When she visits. Noah ruffled his daughter's hair affectionately. Why don't you go wash up for dinner, kiddo? It'll be ready in about 20 minutes. Once Sophie had bounded upstairs, Noah turned to Emma, his expression serious. Are you sure about this? Having Lily here in Cedar Falls with everything else that's going on? Emma leaned against the counter, considering. I'm not sure about anything, honestly. But Beth made a good point. Hiding Lily away, treating our relationship like a secret, only reinforces the idea that there's something shameful about it. Noah nodded slowly. Makes sense. And timing-wise, next weekend works. I was planning to take Sophie camping, but we could postpone that. No, don't change your plans, Emma said quickly. This is between me and Lily. I don't want to disrupt your time with Sophie. Noah's expression softened as he stepped closer, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. Emma, haven't you figured it out yet? You're not disrupting our lives. You're becoming part of them. The simple declaration left Emma momentarily speechless, the truth of it settling into her bones with a rightness that was both terrifying and exhilarating. So what do you suggest? She finally managed. I suggest we all spend the weekend together, Noah said, as if it were the most natural solution in the world. Not camping. That might be too intense for a first meeting. But here, we can show Lily around town, have a picnic by the lake if the weather holds. Maybe drive into Des Moines for that new exhibit at the Science Museum Sophie's been wanting to see. Emma stared at him, overwhelmed by the casual inclusivity of his plan. You'd do that? Incorporate Lily into your weekend with Sophie? Noah's smile was gentle, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way that made Emma's heart skip. Of course I would. She's important to you, which makes her important to us. The us hung in the air between them, weighted with significance. Not just Noah, not just Sophie, but a unit, a family that was somehow making room for Emma, and by extension, for Lily. I don't know what to say, Emma admitted, her voice thick with emotion. Noah brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch achingly tender. Say yes. Say we'll figure this out together. All of us, one step at a time. As Emma looked up into his steady gaze, the last of her reservations melted away. She had spent 13 years running from connection, from the messy, complicated reality of love and family. But standing in Noah's kitchen, with Sophie's cheerful voice drifting down from upstairs and the scent of home-cooked food filling the air, she couldn't remember why. Yes, she said simply, rising on tiptoe to press her lips to his. Yes, to all of it. A year could change everything. Emma stood in front of the floor-length mirror in Noah's bedroom, their bedroom now, adjusting the simple white dress that Beth had helped her choose. Outside, the June sunshine filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the backyard where white folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows. You look beautiful, Beth said, stepping into the room with a small bouquet of wildflowers. Simple. Perfect. Emma turned, taking in her friend's elegant blue dress. It still amazed her how quickly Beth had shifted from Lily's adoptive mother to genuine friend and confidant over the past year. I'm nervous, Emma admitted, accepting the bouquet. What if I trip? What if I forget my vows? What if everything goes perfectly? Beth interrupted gently. What if this is exactly where you're meant to be? Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. How's Lily doing? Practicing her violin one last time, as if she hasn't been rehearsing that piece for months. Beth's smile was fond. She wants everything to be perfect for you and Noah. And Sophie? Running circles around David, asking if her flower crown is straight every 30 seconds. Beth laughed, the sound warm with affection. That child has more energy than a power plant. Emma smiled, picturing Noah's daughter, soon to be her stepdaughter officially, with her gap-toothed grin and boundless enthusiasm. The past year had transformed Sophie from a curious 8-year-old to a confident 9-year-old who had fully embraced her role as Lily's almost sister. A soft knock at the door preceded Lily's entrance, violin case in hand, already dressed in the pale yellow dress they'd chosen together. At 14, she was growing into her features, the resemblance to Emma more pronounced than ever. "Mom says it's almost time," she said, then caught herself with a small smile. "I mean Beth Mom, not Emma Mom." The distinction had evolved naturally over the months, a way for Lily to acknowledge both women in her life without diminishing either relationship. Emma felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest at being called Mom in any capacity, a privilege she'd never expected to earn. "Are you ready to play?" Emma asked, her voice catching slightly. Lily nodded, confidence radiating from her posture. "I've been practicing Bach's Air on the G string for 3 months. I could play it in my sleep." "It's going to be beautiful," Emma assured her, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind Lily's ear, a maternal gesture that had once felt foreign, but now came naturally. "I should go check on David and make sure everything's set up outside," Beth said, moving toward the door. "Sophie said something about releasing butterflies during the ceremony, and I'm not entirely sure she was joking." Once Beth had gone, Lily set down her violin case and moved closer to Emma, her expression turning serious. "Can I ask you something? Before everything gets crazy out there?" "Of course," Emma said, sitting on the edge of the bed and patting the spot beside her. "Anything." Lily sat, smoothing her dress over her knees. "Are you happy? Like really happy?" The question caught Emma off guard with its directness. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Happier than I ever thought possible." "Because of Noah? And Sophie?" "Partly," Emma acknowledged. "They brought so much joy into my life, but also because of you, because of Beth and David, because of the clinic and the life I've built here." She studied her daughter's face, reading the unasked question beneath the surface. "Are you worried about something, Lily?" Lily hesitated, picking at an invisible thread on her dress. I want to make sure I'm not messing anything up for you, oh. By being in your life, I mean." Emma's heart clenched at the vulnerability in Lily's voice. After a year of cautious relationship building, monthly visits, and countless video calls, there were still moments when the weight of their complicated history surfaced unexpectedly. "Lily, look at me," Emma said gently, waiting until those familiar eyes, her eyes, met hers. "You being in my life is one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. Not a burden, not a complication, a gift." Noah and Sophie feel the same way. "Really?" Lily still sounded uncertain. "Even with all the drama at the beginning, the rumors and Mrs. Parker and everything?" Emma smiled, remembering the tumultuous early days of reconnecting with Lily while simultaneously navigating small-town judgment. "That wasn't because of you. That was about people's narrow understanding of what family can look like." "And now?" Lily asked. "Do they understand better now?" Emma considered the question, thinking about how much had changed in Cedar Falls over the past year. Dr. Patel had become one of her strongest advocates at the clinic. Most patients had either accepted her story or at least kept their judgments to themselves. Even Detty Parker had grudgingly ceased her campaign of whispers, though she still sniffed disapprovingly whenever she encountered Emma in town. "Some do," Emma said honestly. "Others probably never will. But I've learned that I don't need everyone's approval to live authentically." Lily nodded, absorbing this. Then with the resilience of youth, her mood shifted. "Sophie says after you and Noah get married, we'll be sisters. Not by blood, but by, what did she call it? Complicated family geometry." Emma laughed, the tension breaking. "That sounds like Sophie. And she's right in her own way. Family isn't always about straight lines and simple connections. Sometimes it's about circles that overlap in unexpected places." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. David Morrison stood in the doorway, handsome in a charcoal suit, his expression a mixture of happiness and something more complex. "They're ready for us downstairs," he said, his eyes lingering on Lily with paternal pride. Noah's waiting at the altar, looking simultaneously terrified and ecstatic. Lily picked up her violin case and headed for the door, pausing to kiss Emma's cheek. "See you out there, Emma, Mom." As Lily disappeared down the hallway, David remained in the doorway, his posture slightly stiff. Of all the relationships that had formed in the wake of Emma and Lily's reunion, this one remained the most cautious. David had eventually accepted Emma's place in Lily's life, but his protective instincts ran deep. "You look lovely," he said formally. "Thank you, David." Emma smoothed her dress, suddenly nervous again. "Is everything ready?" David hesitated, then stepped fully into the room, closing the door partially behind him. "There's something I wanted to say to you before the ceremony." Emma tensed slightly, unsure what to expect. "Of course, I was wrong about you," David said, the words seeming difficult for him. "A year ago, when Lily first found you, I was convinced you would disrupt our family, that you were a threat to what we'd built." Emma remained silent, sensing he wasn't finished. "I didn't understand then what Beth tried to explain to me, that family isn't a zero-sum game, that Lily having you in her life didn't mean she had less love for us." David's expression softened. "I've watched you this past year, Emma. I've seen how careful you've been with Lily's feelings, how respectful of our boundaries, how genuine in your affection." Emma swallowed against the unexpected lump in her throat. "Thank you, David. That means more than you know." "I should be thanking you," he said quietly, "for giving us Lily in the first place, and for enriching her life now in ways we couldn't have anticipated." He extended his arm, the gesture formal but sincere. "Now, I believe you have a wedding to attend, and while I know I'm not walking you down the aisle, I'd be honored to escort you downstairs." Emma placed her hand on his arm, recognizing the olive branch for what it was, not just acceptance, but the beginning of a friendship independent of their shared connection to Lily. "I'd like that very much," she said. The backyard had been transformed under Beth's expert direction. White chairs faced a simple wooden arch that Noah had crafted himself, festooned with wildflowers and trailing greenery. Instead of a traditional aisle runner, cedar chips created a natural pathway through the grass. A small string quartet, friends of Lily's music teacher, played softly as guests found their seats. Emma paused at the back door, taking in the scene. Noah stood beneath the arch, tall and handsome in a navy suit, his hair freshly cut, his face clean-shaven for the occasion. Sophie bounced on her toes beside him, her flower crown slightly askew, her excitement palpable even from a distance. On the opposite side stood Emma's matron of honor, Beth, along with Dr. Patel and several nurses from the clinic who had become friends as well as colleagues over the past year. The music shifted and Lily stepped forward with her violin. As the first notes of Bach's air floated across the garden, the guests turned expectantly toward the house. Emma took a deep breath and began her walk toward the future she'd never dared to imagine. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion and sacred promises. Noah's voice steady as he vowed to love and cherish her, Sophie's exuberant addition of "me too" after each of Noah's promises, drawing laughter from the guests. Emma's own voice, surprisingly clear as she pledged herself to this man and his daughter, to the family they were creating together. When the minister asked who gave Emma to be married, a moment of silence fell over the gathering. Emma had no father to perform this traditional role, no family of origin to stand for her. Then, as if rehearsed, though Emma knew it hadn't been, both Lily and Sophie stepped forward together. "We do," they said in unison, their voices clear and proud. "We give her." The simple declaration, spontaneous and heartfelt, brought tears to Emma's eyes and a ripple of emotion through the assembled guests. It was perfect, not the traditional family presentation, but one that acknowledged the unconventional bonds that had brought them all to this moment. The reception that followed was small but joyful. Tables set up under strands of fairy lights in the backyard, a local band playing a mixture of classics and modern songs. Emma found herself constantly seeking Noah in the crowd, drawn to her husband, like a compass, finding north. "Mrs. Walsh," he murmured when she finally made her way to his side, his arm sliding around her waist. "Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" "I'm still getting used to it," Emma admitted, leaning into his solid warmth. "But yes, it does." They watched as Sophie led Lily in an enthusiastic, if somewhat uncoordinated dance, both girls laughing as they spun in circles. Beth and David sat at a nearby table, deep in conversation with Dr. Patel and his wife. "We did it," Noah said quietly. Against all odds, we created this. Emma followed his gaze, taking in the scene. Not just the wedding decorations and celebration, but the deeper reality of what they'd built together. A family pieced together from fragments of loss and hope, stronger for its unconventional beginnings. I never thought I'd have this, she confessed. After giving Lily up, I convinced myself I didn't deserve a family of my own. Noah turned to face her fully, his eyes serious despite his smile. Emma Walsh, listen to me. You have always deserved happiness. Always. The fact that you couldn't see it doesn't make it any less true. The absolute certainty in his voice washed over her like a benediction. This man who had seen her at her most vulnerable, who had witnessed her struggles and triumphs over the past year, still looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in his world. How did I get so lucky? She wondered aloud. Noah laughed softly. I ask myself the same question every day. Their moment was interrupted by Sophie barreling into them, slightly out of breath from dancing. Dad! Emma, Mom! Lily says she's spending the whole summer with us while you're on your honeymoon. Is that true? Emma exchanged a glance with Noah, amusement dancing in both her eyes at Sophie's excited misconception. Not the whole summer, sweetheart. Just 2 weeks while we're in Maine. Then she'll go home to Ames with Beth and David. Sophie's face fell slightly. Oh, I thought because you're married now, Lily would live with us all the time. It's not that simple, Noah explained gently. Lily's home is still with Beth and David. They're her parents. But Emma's her mom too, Sophie insisted with the straightforward logic of childhood. And now you're married to Emma, so that makes you kind of like her dad too, right? So why can't she just live with us? The innocent question highlighted the complexity of their blended family situation. Emma knelt to Sophie's level, choosing her words carefully. Lily has 2 families who love her very much, she explained. Just like you have 2 moms who love you. Your mom, Julia, who's in heaven, and me here on earth. Different kinds of love, but both real. Sophie considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. So Lily gets to have 2 houses? That seems pretty lucky. Emma smiled, relieved at Sophie's simple acceptance. Yes, I suppose it is. And we're lucky too because we get to be part of her life. Sophie nodded, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Can I have more cake? One more piece, Noah conceded. Then it's time to start saying goodbye to the guests. It's getting late. As Sophie darted off toward the dessert table, Emma rose to find Noah watching her with undisguised admiration. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. You, he said simply. The way you handled that. The way you always know what to say to her. Emma shook her head. Not always. I'm still figuring this stepmother thing out as I go. We all are, Noah assured her, taking her hand. But we're figuring it out together, and that's what matters. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Emma found herself sitting at a quiet table with Beth, watching as Noah and David dismantled one of the buffet tables together. Their movements awkward but cooperative. They're trying, Beth observed, following Emma's gaze. For Lily's sake, for all our sakes, really. It's more than I ever expected, Emma admitted. A year ago, I would have said this was impossible. Beth smiled, reaching over to squeeze Emma's hand. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? Especially when we stop running from the hard parts. Emma nodded, thinking of the long, sometimes painful journey that had brought her to this day. The confrontation with Dr. Patel. The standoff with Deddy Parker. The first weekend Lily had spent in Cedar Falls, tentative and hopeful. The gradual thawing of David's reserve. The 1,000 small moments of connection that had knitted their unconventional family together. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. Telling me about your son, opening that door? Beth considered the question, her expression turning thoughtful. No, she said finally. It was time, and seeing you build this relationship with Lily. It's been healing for me too, in ways I didn't anticipate. Have you ever thought about finding him? Emma asked carefully, knowing this was sensitive territory. Your son, I mean. Beth's gaze drifted to where Lily stood with Sophie, the 2 girls examining something on Sophie's phone, heads bent close together in companionable silence. I've thought about it, she admitted, more this past year than ever before. Watching you and Lily, it's made me wonder. Would David support you if you decided to search? Beth's smile was soft, knowing. He would now. A year ago, I'm not sure. But seeing how this has unfolded, how our family has expanded rather than fractured, yes, I think he would understand. The conversation was interrupted by Lily and Sophie approaching, excitement evident in their matching grins. Can we make the announcement now? Sophie asked, practically vibrating with contained energy. Please? Noah appeared behind them, eyebrows raised in question. What announcement? Lily and Sophie exchanged conspiratorial glances. We've been working on a surprise, Lily explained, for the wedding. For all of you, actually, Sophie added. Can we do it now, before people leave? The adults exchanged curious looks, but Noah nodded. Sure, the microphone is still set up by the band. The girls hurried toward the small stage area, whispering intensely. Emma watched them go, a mixture of curiosity and mild trepidation filling her. Should we be worried? She asked Noah as he helped her to her feet. With those two? Always, he replied with a laugh. But I'm guessing it's something good. They've been huddled together planning something for weeks. The remaining guests gathered around as Sophie tapped the microphone, her small voice amplified across the yard. Hello? Can I have your attention, please? She waited as conversations died down. Thank you for coming to my dad and Emma's wedding. It's been the best day ever. A chorus of awes rippled through the crowd, and Sophie beamed, clearly enjoying her moment in the spotlight. Lily and I have been working on a special surprise, she continued, because today isn't just about Dad and Emma getting married. It's about all of us becoming a family. Lily stepped forward, her natural grace a contrast to Sophie's exuberant energy. We wanted to find a way to show how our two families are coming together, even though it's, what did you call it, Sophie? Complicated family geometry, Sophie supplied proudly. Laughter spread through the gathering, and Emma felt Noah's arm tighten around her waist. So we made something, Lily continued, with a little help from David, Dad, and Noah. David stepped forward, holding what appeared to be a large wooden frame covered with a cloth. He set it on an easel that Noah quickly positioned beside the girls. Ready? Sophie asked, gripping one corner of the cloth. Lily nodded, taking the other corner. Together, they pulled the covering away to reveal an intricate wooden structure, a family tree unlike any Emma had seen before. Instead of a traditional tree with branching limbs, this was crafted as two separate trees whose branches had grown together in the middle, their limbs intertwining to form a canopy of shared leaves. Small wooden hearts hung from various branches, each engraved with a name: Noah, Emma, Sophie, Lily, Beth, David, and even Julia, Noah's late wife. See, Sophie explained excitedly, it's two families growing together. Dad helped with the woodworking, and David, Dad, helped with the design, and Lily and I did the painting and the hearts. Emma stared at the creation, too moved to speak. It was beautiful, not just the craftsmanship, but the thought behind it, the visual representation of what they'd all been trying to articulate over the past year. The best part, Lily added, her voice softening, is that there's room to add more hearts as our family grows. The simple statement, loaded with future possibility, brought fresh tears to Emma's eyes. She moved forward almost without conscious thought, drawing both girls into an embrace. It's perfect, she whispered. Absolutely perfect. The guests applauded as Noah joined them, his arm encircling all three. After a moment, Beth and David stepped forward too, completing the circle around the unconventional family tree that so perfectly captured their journey. As the celebration finally wound down and the last guest departed, Emma found herself standing in the quiet backyard, fairy lights twinkling overhead like earthbound stars. Noah approached from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Walsh? Emma leaned back against his solid warmth. I was just thinking about scars. Scars? Noah's voice held gentle curiosity. Emma nodded, her gaze drifting to where the family tree now stood on the porch, illuminated by a single spotlight. A year ago, I thought my scars defined me. The choice I made at 16, the years of running, the shame I carried. Noah remained silent, giving her space to continue. But scars are just evidence of healing, aren't they? Proof that something painful happened, but also proof that we survived it. She turned in his arms to face him. My scars led me here, to you, to Sophie, to this second chance with Lily. They're not something to hide anymore. Noah's eyes, warm in the soft light, studied her face with tender attention. I've always seen your scars as badges of courage, he said quietly. Evidence of a heart that's been broken, but refused to stay that way. Emma reached up, tracing the lines at the corners of his eyes. Laughter lines, worry lines, the physical map of his own journey through grief and love and hope. There are some wounds that never fully heal, she acknowledged. I'll always carry the weight of those 13 years away from Lily. You'll always miss Julia. Beth still wonders about her son. Noah nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. But we keep moving forward anyway. We build something new from the broken pieces. Exactly. Emma smiled, feeling the rightness of his words settle into her bones. And sometimes what we build is stronger than what we lost. They stood together in comfortable silence, the June night wrapping around them like a blessing. From inside the house came the muffled sounds of Lily playing her violin, something soft and sweet that drifted through the open windows. Sophie's laughter rang out, followed by Beth's gentler tones, the soundtrack of their unconventional family at peace. Are you ready for this? Noah asked, his voice warm against her ear. For whatever comes next. Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here, from the terrified 16-year-old signing adoption papers, to the woman who had spent years running from her past, to this moment of profound belonging. She thought about the family tree with space for new hearts, new connections, new possibilities none of them could yet imagine. Yes, she said simply, turning to kiss her husband under the canopy of stars. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. In the quiet garden where they had exchanged their vows just hours before, Emma Walsh finally embraced the truth she had been running from for 13 years, that some wounds become pathways to unexpected joy, that broken things can be mended in ways more beautiful than their original form, and that love, in all its messy complexity, was always worth the risk of pain. Her scars, once carried in silence and shame, had finally learned to speak a new language, one of forgiveness, acceptance, and the profound healing that comes when we stop running and finally find our way home.